Here's your shot at winning $1,000. Text the national keyword bonus right now to 95819. That's BONUS to 95819. We'll text you back to confirm your entry. Data and messaging rates may apply. Please don't text and drive. It's $5K a day on WMAL. Now on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
It's 7:07 this Tuesday morning. Thanks for tuning in, and thanks to Andrew Langer and Bethany Mandel for sitting in for me yesterday as I took a bit of a mental health break for some family time that was much needed after this year. Thanks so much for joining us today. It's Larry O'Connor with Patrice Onwuka. Patrice is here on a Tuesday. Good morning, Patrice.
Filling in for Julie. Julie's taking a little break. Yeah.
Coming up at 7:35, Margaret Olohan, and at 8:05, Joe Concha will join us. Award-winning journalist here in Washington, D.C. for WJLA ABC7 is Nick Minock. He finally caught up with Abigail Spanberger running for governor and asked a very simple question, very directly, a very clear question. Take a listen. This is what the question was, cut 20.
Do you support biological males who say they're women using women's locker rooms and bathrooms and competing in women's sports?
That's right. No question about the law, no question about court cases, no question about current pending legal battles between school systems and Title IX and the Department of Education. Just, do you support this policy? Here's Abigail Spanberger's answer, the woman who wants to be governor, cut 21.
The argument is, the assessment is, there needs to be much clearer guidance in terms of what is an executive order's binding assessment of Title IX versus what has been a decision of a court.
Well, actually, and that's just a truncated version of the answer that was even a little bit more, well, in my opinion, rambly and nonspecific, and certainly not a direct answer to the direct question. So here is that reporter, Nick Minock, again of WJLA, joining us now. And first of all, Nick, listen, thank you for being dogged here and continuing to ask this very simple question. And Nick, good morning. This is relevant because there are a lot of issues pending right now in Northern Virginia in particular that, should Abigail Spanberger become governor, will have to face. Her insight and her position on these issues is incredibly relevant, I would think.
Right. And parents want to know, where does she stand? I mean, we've been hearing from parents for 3-4 years now about this issue in Loudoun County, Fairfax County. And this is news right now in this election cycle, right? Yeah. You've got 5 Northern Virginia school systems who are defending these policies. They are risking federal funding to defend them. The U.S. Department of Education, the Trump administration, says they violate Title IX and protection for women. Yeah. And so what would she do as governor? You know, if I had an opportunity to ask her another question, I would ask her, so let's say she's elected, and these 5 school systems lose their federal funding. Is she going to have the Virginia General Assembly make up that funding gap? So there's a lot of important questions to ask her here. Unfortunately, she dodged the question.
She did, and then you followed up and said, but do you support the policy? And she ignored you. She moved on. She left. You had a couple of different other shots. You were sort of shouting the question. She completely ignored you. Have you heard back from the campaign at all for further clarity on the Congresswoman's position on this?
No, and it was interesting when they were arranging this press gaggle, right? So there were a bunch of reporters there right after her rally, Get Out the Vote rally on the first day of early voting. And her staff comes over to us reporters and says, hey, we're going to call on individual reporters. And usually at press scrums, you just shout your questions. That's what I was prepared to do. And after they said that, I said, well, wait a minute, are you going to call on me? And they hesitated. They said, well, we're going to go to a radio station and then we're going to do a local TV. I said, well, are you going to call on me to ask a question? And at this point, they realized I was videotaping them. And they're like, oh, yeah, okay, we'll call on you. And I said, good, because if you don't, I'm just going to ask my question. And you could just tell they were angered, frustrated by that. It just shows that her staff, it seems, is trying to protect her from answering these questions. Because as you recall, I think I was on WMAL some time ago. We were talking about how we sent these questions in writing to Spanberger's campaign. They sent back a statement that did not answer the question directly. And you see that play out, too, face-to-face.
Nick, switching gears just a little bit, but still on the topic of what's happening in schools, you were reporting on a story in Fairfax County where schools in the county are actually seeking to sue a victim of sexual assault in schools for $250,000. Apparently, she's a woman who came forward saying that in middle school she was sexually assaulted by other students. She reported the incident to school officials and administrators, and they did nothing. And now the schools are actually suing this victim. Tell us about this story and what kind of impact it could have on future victims.
Right. So this young woman who is now 26 years old, she was 12 years old when she said she was sexually assaulted as a middle school student, as a seventh grader at Rachel Carson Middle School. So she later on, I think she was 24 or 23 when she began to sue FCPS, sued them because of how FCPS handled her sexual assault case. And FCPS hired some of the best attorneys money can buy. They have the resources for it, being a multi-billion-dollar institution. And it was quite the sight to see when reporting on this, because you walked into the courtroom, and on the right side of the courtroom, you saw FCPS and all their attorneys. There's like over 30 attorneys, it looked like. And then on the other side, you had the plaintiff who was suing the school system, and she had like 5 attorneys. So, FCPS has the resources to outgun anybody who goes against them, she says. Anyways, the jury decided in favor of the school system.
Okay.
And now FCPS is turning around and asking a judge to order the victim to pay them $250 to cover some of the legal fees. So that's the latest right now. The judge is taking it under advisement, so we're just waiting for an opinion from the judge now. But the victim says this will have a chilling effect on sexual assault survivors who may come forward in the future and may decide to try to hold the school system accountable.
Nick Minock is our guest, WJLA reporter, and we're talking about a lot of things going on in the gubernatorial race here and in the Northern Virginia school systems. I got to back to this question and answer in exchange with Abigail Spanberger. She clearly did not answer your question the first time, and then you kept repeating and following up, and she just ignored you and smiled. There were other reporters there, Nick, and I've seen this happen before when another reporter will pick up on a question that a politician sort of avoids and says, well, listen, I just want to follow up on Nick's question because you didn't really give a clear answer. Can you elaborate, please? Does that happen ever when covering Abigail Spanberger? Because it seems like that would be a really smart thing for a journalist to do.
Well, that was my hope, because when I tried to ask a follow-up, and immediately after she gave her answer, well, how do you personally feel is what I asked her. What do you personally think about these policies? Her staff kind of freaked out. Her staff, their hands were shaking and like, oh no, we got to go to WUSA Channel 9. And I looked at the reporter and I said, well, maybe you want to ask the question.
Oh, you did?
And he kind of laughed, and he, I think, asked a question about Jimmy Kimmel.
Wow. All right. Well.
So that's what's happening right now. Listening to
By the way, that's pretty hilarious considering Kimmel is regularly is on your station, and here's somebody on a competing station wanting to ask a question about a show on your station, Nick. That instead of just following up on, an issue that affects Virginians.
I'll tell you what, looking back at the footage of the Q&A with Spanberger, when I asked the question about the bathroom locker room in sports issue, the reporters and the gaggle, they were just wide-eyed. I think they also wanted to know where she stood on this issue. Perhaps maybe they didn't want to get into it with Abigail. They didn't want to be the one because they think maybe she'll win, and then they want to have a good relationship with the future governor. But that's not our job. We are a top 10 market where we need to practice capital J journalism. We need to ask important questions for our viewers. I'd like to see more news stations do that.
Amen, brother. And as long as you keep doing your job there, Nick Minock, that's what the J in WJLA is going to stand for, journalism. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick.
Always good to talk with you. Keep it up. Keep pressing. It is 7:15 WMAL.
WMAL, making sense of the news. Live from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios. Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
It's Larry O'Connor with Patrice Onwuka covering the big stories of the day. And one of the biggest is that ABC apparently is defying the Trump administration and the FCC and putting Jimmy Kimmel back on the air tonight, which, again, just to be clear, my understanding of this story, if you watch, typical mainstream legacy corporate media, is that Jimmy Kimmel was removed from the air and censored by the federal government and Brendan Carr and the FCC, right? So how is it that ABC
narrative.
can defy them?
That's the left's narrative, because they don't want to admit that there are lots of other reasons why Jimmy Kimmel was removed from the air.
Yeah,
temporarily.
Lots of them. It has been announced that he will be returning tonight. It is also being reported that Governor Gavin Newsom of California will be his guest, which, of course, doubles down on the political agenda of the show. Whether he will address the controversy and the false statements he made, further endangering people associated with Turning Point USA or conservative speakers on college campuses, because he suggested that it wasn't the truth, that left-wing violence actually contributed to Charlie Kirk's assassination. Whether he addresses that, apologizes, acknowledges he was wrong and insensitive, we'll see. Everybody screaming First Amendment, though, seems to pretend like you have the right to say whatever you want without any consequences. And they also seem to think that a corporation like ABC Entertainment or Disney is somehow the federal government when it comes to making decisions as to whether you can stay on the air or not. There seems to be a lot of confusion over there on the left. The biggest confusion, I think, Patrice, is that it's virtuous and noble for liberals who support Jimmy Kimmel to threaten Disney by cutting off their subscriptions to Hulu and other streaming platforms because they're unhappy with what decision ABC made. And yet it is authoritarian and censorious and evil for conservative viewers to pick up the phone or write an email and complain about what ABC Entertainment did by having Jimmy Kimmel on the air. One is virtuous if you use the power of your protest to put pressure on Disney, and the other is authoritarian if you use the power of the protest to put pressure on Disney. And that
Funny
I will
how
never
that works.
understand. Yeah.
Funny how that works. The left's hypocrisy. I was actually reading an interesting New York Post opinion piece by Charlie Gasparino. We talked a little bit about the financial aspect of this, which is that Jimmy Kimmel's show had been really poor. The ratings had fallen pretty low, and so his show costs. The show. There are like 200 people on staff to produce the show. He's making about $17 million. So in total, you're looking at $20 million a year just to keep the show on the road. And whether or not financially it makes any more sense for Jimmy Kimmel to still be on. But as Gasparino is saying, it's not just there are lots of other ways that Jimmy Kimmel's show could be making money, from sponsorship deals and ads and the affiliate fees and so on and so forth. I just think that at the end of the day, I think the financials will win out. And while there's a lot of pressure right now to bring him back, I actually don't think this is going to be a permanent reinstatement. I think this is going to be short term, and I think that when the dust has settled and when people don't care anymore, then you might see ABC say, okay, we're going to retire this show. At this point, it's run its course. We don't need to keep him any longer, and that's going to be done. But for tonight's episode, if anybody wants to start a drinking game, and I'm not advocating for it, but if you do a drinking game, the word should be fascist, because I can imagine the amount of times that Jimmy Kimmel and Gavin Newsom are going to use the F word, fascists.
Well, it'll be interesting. And by the way, Sinclair, which is one of the largest ownership groups of local ABC affiliates, including the ABC affiliate here in Washington, D.C., Channel 7, Sinclair has said that they don't care that ABC is reinstating Jimmy Kimmel. They will not be airing it on their station.
There you go.
Until Charlie Kirk apologizes personally to Mrs.
Jimmy
Kirk.
Kimmel.
I'm sorry. Jimmy Kimmel apologizes personally to Mrs. Kirk and makes a donation to the family and to Turning Point USA, which I suspect will not happen. So that standoff continues, and that accounts for, I believe, because of the size of the markets that Sinclair owns stations, that's about 38% potentially of the Jimmy Kimmel audience. So Yeah, this story is not over yet. There's also speculation that the reason Gavin Newsom is the guest and the reason that ABC buckled under is because ABC Disney is due a tax credit for producing the Jimmy Kimmel Show in Los Angeles, California. That's a state tax credit that Gavin Newsom signed into law, and there is suggestions that he threatened that tax credit, which, by the way, would be the use of government power.
That sounds pretty fascist to me.
A private company's decision. Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
Exactly. Fascist for me and not for thee. Well, we'll watch tonight, I suppose. Well, no, we won't. We won't watch it all, but we'll watch
There'll be
the
clips circulating in the morning.
We'll talk about it tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's 7:23.
All right, coming up, married Margaret Olohan from the Daily Wire. Stay with us. It's O'Connor and Company at 7:30.
WMAL-FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station. Making sense of the news. News Talk 105.9. News now. Now on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
7:37 now. Thanks for tuning in here. Busy morning here in your nation's capital. Tuesday, the 23rd day of September. It's Larry O'Connor with Patrice Onwuka. Julie Gunlock on vacation this week. Good morning, Patrice.
Yes, good morning.
Joe Concha will join us at 8:05 on the Kimmel story. Joining us right now is Margaret Olohan, White House correspondent for the Daily Wire. Margaret, thanks for joining us. I appreciate it.
Of course. Lovely to be here.
A lot going on in the news that you're covering at the White House right now. If you could, though, just reflect a little bit on the events this Sunday at the Charlie Kirk Memorial. I know that you, a journalist of your generation, very much affected by Charlie Kirk and his activities and his activism, and what the tone is like right now, the mood at the White House after this remarkable event.
Absolutely. I was lucky enough to travel with the president on Air Force One to the memorial on Sunday, so we flew down there on Sunday morning and back on Sunday night. And just the experience of walking into that State Farm Stadium, walking in and seeing the 90,000 attendees gathered to honor Charlie's memory and to give glory to God, which is a massive part of this event. Every single speaker talked about Charlie's relationship with Jesus Christ, and they talked about the revival that they're seeing around the country. And they didn't just honor Charlie's memory. They urged all Americans and young people to move forward and to live out his mission. And it was incredibly beautiful and incredibly inspiring. And what was particularly significant, in my opinion, was that almost all the high-profile members of President Donald Trump's administration came to this event. They blocked off their days, and they came down and they delivered these speeches, which I would argue are going to be a rallying cry for weeks and months and years to come. Just some of the ones off the top of my head that really touched me: Jack Posobiec, Stephen Miller, J.D. Vance, Donald Trump Jr., Erica Kirk, of course, and the president himself. It was just an incredible day that I'm never going to forget, and I think, incredibly moving for many of us. At one point when Erica was speaking, and she took a moment to really gather herself before she said that she forgives the man that did kill her husband. I was up on a media riser with all of these guys that are handling the tech up there. And I, of course, was, very moved by this, and I was crying, and I looked around me, and all these men are all crying as well.
Wow.
These kind of tough guys that are handling the technology at the TPUSA event, and just there was not a dry eye in the entire house. Just everyone was so moved by Erica. She's so beautiful and she's so glamorous up there, but at the same time, she's mourning the loss of her husband, who she will never get back. And so it was just unforgettable, and I was so grateful to be there.
Thank you for your thoughts there. Those are the first I've heard about kind of the behind the scenes and the impact that her words had on the audience and the people who are bringing what you saw in person to the rest of us. Shifting gears just a little bit, though, I would love for you to talk about President Trump's executive order labeling Antifa as a terrorist organization. I mean, I'm sure you have had run-ins or you've seen Antifa members obviously trying their best to strike fear in the hearts of the nation. Would love your thoughts on what this executive order means, and what are you hearing on the streets of D.C. about it?
Oh, well, this is incredibly important. I mean, every conservative reporter, every conservative commentator has an Antifa story. Many of us have been targeted by Antifa. Senator Josh Hawley and Tucker Carlson have had Antifa groups go to their homes and intimidate their families. It's incredibly scary. I know a reporter who, during the first Trump administration, was reporting on the inauguration. He filmed Antifa and got a brick thrown at his head and ended up in the hospital. There's just so many examples of Antifa violence. My friend Andy No, who's a reporter, was brutally beaten and treated by them. So this is a big deal, and the president signing the order is that's a move on the Trump administration's part to tell the world, to tell these far left organizers and activists, we mean business. We are done with this type of terrorism on our country, and frankly, it's long overdue. We saw this throughout the Biden administration, so much violence, so many riots, attacks on law enforcement, doxing. It's been unbelievable. So grateful to the president for doing that. But I'd actually argue too, this is something that I asked the president on Air Force One on Sunday night. The Antifa violence is very bad across the United States, and is something that we need to take care of. But what we've seen in recent years, and especially in the last 3 or so years, is attacks from trans-identifying individuals, people who think they're transgender, specifically on Christians and children. And, we've seen a number of examples of this, the Covenant shooter, the Annunciation shooter, and now we know that Charlie Kirk's killer lived with a boyfriend who identifies as transgender. And so we're still learning the details of this couple, of their ultimate goal, their ultimate motives behind this. Of course, we know that the killer was ideologically motivated to kill Charlie because of his beliefs. But what I asked the president was, what are we going to do about transgender violence? Are you looking into this? And he told me, yes, he sees a pattern there, and they are looking into this.
Mary Margaret Olohan, we got to leave it there, but we always love your voice here when you're on the air, co-hosting sometimes when we're lucky, and also every day covering the White House for Daily Wire. Always good to talk to you, my friend.
Thanks, Mary Margaret.
Thanks so much for having me.
Anytime. It is 7:43.
Later this morning on the Chris Plante Show, President Trump to New York for the United Nations. And does Tylenol have anything to do with autism? 9 a.m. on WMAL.
As we continue this discussion about Jimmy Kimmel returning tonight, but not on Sinclair stations, we're not sure about Nexstar, the other big syndicator. We'll have Joe Concha joining us coming up in like 10 minutes. Charlie Sheen is sort of somehow connected to this story now for two different reasons. First, Charlie Sheen is out there selling a book, so he's doing a lot of talk shows, and he happened to be doing Joe Rogan's show live in real time when the news broke that Charlie Kirk had been murdered. Here's cut 26. Take a listen to what that sounded like.
So this just happened. We just found out that Charlie Kirk got shot.
Awful.
And whoa.
Murder for having a different opinion from somebody else.
Yeah.
Different ideology from somebody else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now
he was on the mark.
He was. That was in immediate real time. He knew exactly what was behind this. A far cry from Jimmy Kimmel, of course, who continued even days later suggesting to his audience that this was some sort of conservative right-wing MAGA assassin, when that was just completely the opposite of the truth.
Yeah.
So on Friday, Charlie Sheen was on Gutfeld's show where they were talking about the Kimmel story. Take a listen to what Jimmy Kimmel said, what Charlie Sheen said, cut 24.
What do you make of this current climate? I mean, you've been, watching what we've been watching. The world is changing.
Well, as far as the Kimmel stuff, I am a firm believer in freedom of speech. Especially some of the speech that I believed in, Yeah, but all of that said, I saw the dismissal as a potential job opening, and if they want to, fix that show and get some ratings, this guy.
Yeah. That is genius.
Thank you.
Except, though, you'd be my competition, and he would kill me.
Although he wouldn't really, because Gutfeld's on at 10, and Kimmel's or Charlie Sheen's theoretical show would be on at 11:30. That would actually be compelling television. I don't agree with or
yeah, Charlie Sheen. I mean,
of Charlie. I mean, he's wackadoodle and crazy, but I also believe in redemption, and he's sort of on a renewal tour here. But wouldn't that be good television if he had his own talk show?
It would be. It would be, because based on what Charlie Sheen is just saying, he would bring a refreshing take from a Hollywood perspective, which is that, Republicans and MAGA supporters are not all fascist, or you can have a different viewpoint and you shouldn't be killed for it. So just saying that makes him stand out from, most of the people coming out of Hollywood right now. I think people would tune in to see what he would have to say, and what salacious, interesting, crazy thing from his life that he would share, because I know he has a zillion stories we have yet to hear about.
Funny you should say that. He just shared a fascinating story with 60 Minutes, as, again, he's promoting his book. He's 60 years old, by the way.
Wow.
The book is called The Book of Sheen. And get this. He was obviously a drug addict. He's been 8 years clean and sober now, but he was insane with the cocaine. This is how bad it got, Patrice. You know it's bad. Charlie Sheen was so bad in his addiction to cocaine that the drug cartels cut him off.
What?
That the Mexican drug cartels were like, "Okay, dude, you've had enough." They cut it out. Actually, the
that
reason
they know him, number one, but number two, to cut him off.
Well, because he was dealing directly with them, and here's what it had: he kept buying so much cocaine from these Mexican drug lords, these drug cartels. And the volume was so high that they thought he was dealing on the side. They thought he was trying to compete with their, foot soldiers on the ground in L.A. and in Hollywood.
He was just doing it himself?
It was all for him and his buddies.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, you've got a cocaine problem when the drug cartels are cutting you off and saying, no more. We're not going to deal with you anymore.
These are the stories I think we would want to see. Stay up late to listen to.
Only if we can use them as life lessons about how bad fame is, how corrupt the industry is, and how we should never even
imagine
going down that road. Yes. 7:53.